Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on the academic and cultural adaptation of Chinese international students at UMB, the struggles and progress from the prospective students and professors. Sorry about this super long title. Okay. So I was anticipating that the reasons why you came to our presentation, is it either because you were interested in Chinese student struggles or you are struggling, to work with Chinese students, right? Or something in between or beyond. Hopefully you will get, what you want, okay? First of all, let me give you a brief introduction to our panelists and what we are going to discuss today. Our panel consists of 5 people. I'm Pingping Chen. I'm the visiting Chinese scholar at UMass Boston. And this is Lorena, Fuentes, and Teddy Chocos. They both are ESL freshman faculty. And we also invited 2 Chinese internet students, Astrid and Ray, to join us. Okay. So today I'm going to start talking about my year-long observations in freshman composition courses, and also my interviews with some students, Chinese students, about their academic struggles and progress. And then Teddy is focusing on her silent students in class and the way of the use of free writing. And Lorena is going to talk about how she engages her Chinese students through humor and peer review. Okay. Also, the 2 students are going to share their stories from cross-cultural perspectives and discuss the extent to which these cultural factors have influenced their learning processes. Okay, I will start. For the purpose of presentation, I particularly cite a quote from Vivian Zamo, the ESL program director, and she's sitting over there. And in her article, Strangers in Academia, the experiences of faculty and ESL students across the curriculum. And I will be honored to read the quote, okay? This is when we take risks of this sort. When we take this step into the unknown by looking for evidence of students' intelligence, by rereading their attempts as coherent efforts, by valuing, not just evaluating their work, and by reflecting on the critical relationship between our work and theirs, that opportunities are created, not only for students, but for teachers to learn in new ways. I love this quote because this quote is fit for the conference theme. I would also, this quote, describe what I have observed and learned from this reflective ESL instructors and their engaging pedagogy. Okay, so I have been here since last fall, and I started my observing both Lorena's and Teddy's classes for the 2 semesters. I have learned a lot. I enjoy visiting their classes, and I especially appreciate their philosophy of being responsive to student concerns, and and they have faith in their students, in their academic improvement and cultural adaptation. And another thing that struck me about this university is its diversity. If you can imagine how diverse a university can be, you got it here. When I came here, I was amazed at the diversity of this campus. It's a global, amazingly global campus of students of color and a faculty of color. However, when I stepped into Lorena's English 100 BC class, I was shocked because all the students are Chinese, except one from Korea. Okay, so the ESL classroom is less diverse than I can expect. So that's what I mean by the diverse campus, yet homogeneous ESL classrooms. But after I've been working with these ESL instructors, I think they are dynamic and interactive. I do notice that there are some individual differences between active students and the passive students. You know, the active students are usually the ones who are adaptable, who are more Americanized. You know, they are digesting fast and making progress. But there are some students who are silent in class. They don't do their work, you know, they don't show passion in learning, and they look, you know, apathetic and unaccomplished. So this phenomenon aroused my curiosity about what linguistic and cultural factors are contributing to this Chinese ESL, you know, students' difficulty, struggles, and progress in their transition experience at UMass Boston. So Teddy, Lorena, and I picked this funny picture because we think this picture describes the image of struggling Chinese students, you know, who are scratching their head, you know, and they're trembling, you know, they're desperate, fighting against their enemy, their papers, you know. Oh, so some of the teachers are struggling too, right? So, yeah, they can be both. Okay, thanks. So I would like to share, you know, my findings through observations and interviews about their students' academic struggles, not only in ESL courses but also in mainstream courses. So I look for patterns, you know, and I categorize 4 main concerns those Chinese internet students are struggling with. And the first 2 are in ESL courses. The first one is plagiarism. You know, and one student said, in China, we are expected to copy the English composition models. Well, it is considered plagiarism, which is such a serious issue at UMB. This is what I translate from Mandarin to English when I talk to the student, you know, after class about plagiarism. Although there's no excuse for plagiarism, it is true that it is challenging for students from China because A, they are not yet well equipped with, you know, academic awareness before entering the university, and B, you know, they were brought up in an EFL, English as a Foreign Language pedagogy in China that places much emphasis on modeling writing. You know, so students have no sense of legally and technically, you know, citing sources in their papers. So this could be a very new experience and a difficult issue for them to deal with. And the second one is critical thinking. You know, teaching thinking to non-native students can be very tough because it is fraught with cultural components. You know, but I'm grateful that both Lorena and Teddy I have observed they did such a fantastic job making critical thinking accessible for Chinese students by providing them with divergent perspectives to use the language as a means of thinking, learning, searching information, and formulating their opinions. You know, and this student says, I think in this student's comment, she indicates that she is in the process of becoming a critical thinker, you know, when she came to the UMass Boston. But she used to lack this kind of skill because, you know, critical thinking has been somewhat discouraged in China. But when they came here, they are receiving the best higher education in the world, you know, the best, you know, thinking skills about critical thinking. And also there are 2 main concerns for the students when they take mainstream courses. And the first one is language barrier. And the student says, being a non-native student in a mainstream course doesn't mean my knowledge is weaker. Rather, I get higher grade than most of them. You know, some Chinese students, they do have advantage in like math or computer science, you know, due to the solid educational background received in China. But the language deficiency, you know, I can still remember when I talk to this student, and he is so concerned about his language problem. And he was afraid that it could be his stigma, that devalues his class subject performance and even his intellectual ability. Many Chinese students are concerned about their language proficiency. And there's another one who feels more frustrated. She, the girl student, and she told me that in other courses, the biggest challenge is sometimes teachers are so fast. And no stop for 3 hours, I can't follow them all the time. These cases make me feel bad. And this student, told me about his bad feelings of taking one of the mainstream courses. And she believes that the reason why the professor talks so fast is because the professor assumes that students from China, they have built the same knowledge. They have the same language level, the same thinking patterns, even the writing, instructions. But apparently, it is not the case. Some Chinese students, they feel frustrated when their professor don't slow down or shelter the content for them, and that they feel more frustrated when they, in such a lecture-based course that the professor can talk for 3 hours without break, and she said this kind of course is going to silence all the students. And I don't mean to offend any professors in a mainstream course, because many students, they admire the professor's expertise and devotion to the course, but they can articulate their needs. If they can do so, why couldn't the professors accommodate their demands and be more sensitive to the diversity of student population? Okay, so that's what I got from the student struggles. And also, I'm glad to receive some positive responses for my interviewed students. And the first one is the students, they are so proud of being part of the UMass Boston, and they said it's their dream and even their parents' dream to send them abroad, receiving higher education in the United States. And they are here, and they acknowledge that this university provides such a good place for them to build knowledge and expand ideas. And also, they appreciate, especially they appreciate these ESL instructors. They think they are caring, patient, responsive, helpful. They are all the words my interview students describe their ESL instructors. And also, they are becoming more aware of this, academic expectations list here. I think Ray and Astrid are good examples, and they are going to share their stories, demonstrate these points in the later accounts. So anyway, I'm so fortunate to work with these ESL instructors, and especially I got insightful, views from Chinese intern students. And I gave them my best wishes that their voices could be heard more, and the doors will be opened wider, with their concerns being addressed and their cross-cultural efforts being appreciated. Okay, thanks. That's my part. And now let's welcome Teddy to address her struggles, working with Chinese students. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, good. I'm going to stir you up a little bit this morning, because as I look around, I see a lot of familiar faces that should be up here with me and not texting Joe over there. My concerns have always been centered around weak students, around the silent student, as well as keeping the challenge going for my high achievers. So today I want to address what do I do about students. How many teachers are here in this room? I'm really curious, the ones I don't know. So have you ever felt, after you assign a reading, You walk into your classroom and you're all excited because you've picked this great reading that you love, that you're passionate about. You walk into the class and you can't wait to hear their reaction. And you say, what did you think of the reading that I assigned you last night? And what do you get? Lorena, what do you get? Silence. These are the silent students. Usually they sit in the back of the room, but usually they don't talk to anyone else. I always wonder what goes on in their mind. So I asked them through an in-class writing assignment, and this was the assignment. Can you please answer these 3 questions? Take a few minutes in your free writing notebook, open it up, and tell me, when teachers ask questions in the classroom, how do you really feel? What do you think? What do you do? 2, do you consider yourself an active or passive participant? And they know what the words active and passive mean because we talk about the reading process and what active reader means and what a passive reader. So they know these words. Describe under what conditions or background and or reasons, and think about the teacher, the class, the peers, the subject, and so forth. And finally, do you see any value in participating in class, in talking about the reading assignment or anything? So this is the results that I got. Take a look and share, because I didn't expect so many of you to come here. And I separated them into 3 different categories. So I would like you to read them for yourselves. Hi, John. Nice to see you. Take a look. Oh, Mish, nice to see you. Thanks. Any extras? Anybody need more? Take a look at the silent student voices and how they answered these questions. Can you pass them? Oh, so many. After looking at some of the answers, can you please take an index card? And I would like you to write what struck you, what amazed you, what made your brain tingle for a few minutes. And pass the cards along. Just write down which quote. Do not copy the quote. I have the quote, don't copy it. All I want is your reaction to it. What makes you think? What makes you, wow, never thought of that. Ooh, that's interesting. How are you, Andrea? I have pens and pencils if you need them, but you should bring them to class all the time. So write down what struck you. You need a pen? You need index cards? You may sit. Just don't text. Now share your response that you wrote on your index card with the person next to you. If you don't have a person next to you, find one. Just share with somebody else. Please, please. Share. Share the response that you wrote with someone else and talk. Wow. They're not silent, see? Look at what happens.
Problems with participating who are nervous, but that extreme is
Can you talk about that, please? That's a great point.
the being so nervous that they're fainting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The dizziness?
Yeah,
The dizziness?
I've never seen this. I've never had a student who's that nervous, but I've seen them like they'll just clam up.
That's great. Please talk about that. What did you find? How are you, Jennifer? Oh, nice to see you. Oh, good. You okay? Wow. You could be up. You look so different. Your hair got long. You didn't have that long hair. How's your little girl? Yeah? Oh my God, you could be up there with me. I didn't even recognize you. We have to talk about China. So what did you find interesting?
I mean, I'm not surprised at anything she said. I think it seems like a huge crisis of confidence and probably a lot from that.
Can you talk about that?
To have that kind of a physical response. So, yeah, I was kind of amazed at
This is a very
Oh, wow.
how they had such a physical
Yeah.
response because they were so scared to
Visceral.
fail.
Right.
Just like that they were fainting.
Right.
That child must have been so overwhelmed.
Right,
Then
right.
very encouraging to read that once they moved here, they kind of were able to start fresh.
Now, did your partner have the same?
No, Dana was talking more about how
I was a bit over here, but I think the acting one, you're a student, you just want to use the classroom speaking environment.
Okay, quiet, silence. Thank you. I have just demonstrated one way of breaking the silence in your classes. This is what I do for the article. This is what I do before I introduce another article. This is what I do all the time when I want to stimulate their mind. And now talk about what did you read from the other person that you didn't have? What did the other person write about that you didn't have? When you ask that question to the ESL student, or the quiet student or the shy student, they are readily available to answer someone else's response because they are not intimidated or humiliated or fear their own responses to be laughed at because it's the other student. So if you don't want to be humiliated, can you tell me what your partner wrote?
We kind of did the same thing, so maybe we shouldn't have been next to each other because we both responded to this first one. You know,
Which-
that thing about that you had up there?
Yeah.
About the lack of freedom, I was passive because we lack freedom and power to think and all that. It's a pretty powerful quote.
Yeah.
Then we were also, I have to say, talking about the whole idea of the Chinese students and the peer pressure that they all seem to feel. And then we're wondering, is this true for any student? You know, I mean, does
That's
this
a
go
great-
on in classrooms with all American kids in English comm classes? And I don't actually know the answer to that. So, but that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of
It does,
peer
because I've taught
pressure.
native speakers too. It does.
Anyway,
It
that's what
can.
we were talking about.
It can.
Yeah.
And how do you feel, coming to the conference and then listening to others? I went to a great conference. I went to a great, this morning, right before my own presentation, and heard a lot. And I learned amazing things, but if I don't write it down, it loses the thought. We lose the retention level. So when I ask students to really become engaged to any material that I give them, once I ask them to free write in the classroom, they take it away with them. they not only talk freely in the class, but they also use it as a stepping ground and a jumping point for their writing, for their academic writing, for their short assignments every week. So it's extremely useful. So this is one of the best ways to break the silence on the students. So my overall analysis. This is what I want to leave you with is, where's my notes? My overall analysis is that most of the silent students feel that they don't have enough knowledge or confidence to participate in the class. As a result, these students fear humiliation, embarrassment, being misunderstood, or making a mistake. They also feel intimidation from higher level students. These students prefer to be in small groups. So I do a lot of small group activities as well in the classroom because it frees them up. Just like when you talk to your partner. It helps too to collaborate and learn about other students' ideas based on the same assignment. Some students also mention that their silence is a habit from their previous learning classroom habits and cultural expectations that are to be respectful, passive, and obedient. But let's keep in mind that the silent student doesn't mean that the mind is inactive. They could be absorbing and learning in their own way. But still, I want to get them to talk. The active student enjoy learning, the teacher, the class, the topics. They are engaged, they are more confident, they're aggressive, they're fearless, they are prepared. And as a result, eager to share their ideas. A few even like to show off their knowledge and English competency. Half write that this is their responsibility as students to ask questions and participate. 75% of the students show that when they gain familiarity within the classroom's expectations and begin feeling comfortable with their peers, they begin to bond and gain the confidence needed to offer their opinions openly without fear of ridicule. So it's very important that we make the classroom friendly enough so that the students can feel trust and confidence. So I call it my academic family from day one. This is my family. And they really are. And I do see them like that. All students agree that by participating in class, my last question, they all feel it's a positive. All of them. I interviewed 30 students, did this in class writing for me. And one of them summarized it really well, and it's, by the way, the exact quote from the students. I did not correct the grammar, so when you see that, it's not my typos. You learn because this is a critical thinking class. Examples and answers from all the students not only help to know more about the subject, but I witnessed their experiences, lifestyle, and level of speaking. So they all profit, they all love it, but yet when you don't guide them to open their mouths, I want to hear a classroom buzzing, just like I heard this presentation when I gave you this particular activity. Thank you so much. Any questions, of course. Oh, yes. Yes. All the time. Okay. All the time. 100%. The quietest, the most removed, the most. But if you noticed, I went around from group to group and I tapped certain people on the shoulder and I said, that's really interesting. That's good. Please share when we're talking about it. So I do go and listen from when they're doing the in-class writing. I go around, I look at a particular point that they've done, that they've written, and I circle it in their notebook, and I say, wow, that's really good. So can you please share that? So I give them that permission or praise needed for them to get that level of confidence and teacher approved. And that way they'll talk. Because now they feel, oh, she told me I'm good. I can say that. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But I also, go around, sometimes if I come in early and I see the shy student or the quiet student and I tell them, you okay today? Is everything fine? Because if you notice one of the responses, I may not feel good today. I may have a headache. And the teacher's always asking me questions. Why? How?
Yeah.
The annoying teacher. You have to know when to step in, when to step back, when to push, when not to push.
Would you say, I mean, you may not have looked at it that way, but do you think that there's any kind of correlation between the so-called inactive student and the active students and linguistic ability, English linguistic ability?
I feel the active students have a higher level of competence. English language competency. They have a higher level. Some of them like to show it off too, and they talk in the class. And they're better prepared because they don't take as long to do the homework or the assignments. Right. Yeah, Jeff?
These are all responses about your classes. Did you get any responses about ESL students who are active with American speakers?
That's good.
Less confidence in those who have a high.
That's a very good point. I didn't ask about mainstream courses. I only asked what is in general, but the second question that says, look at your background or look at your teacher, I did say to them, not necessarily this class or any other class, but I didn't get any responses in terms of, I feel, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Okay. And now Lorena will talk about her struggles and how she's met her challenges.
Yes. Oh, I need the. Where should I put it? Can I put it here? Like this. Oh, like that. All right. Thank you. All right. So this is coming later, so you don't have to take a look at this yet. I just wanted to make sure that I give you these handouts before I start. How about if you maybe take one and pass one around? Would be better. Maybe one per two people. So. So today, I want to talk about two different challenges that I've encountered while teaching ESL composition classes at UMass Boston. And one of the reasons that we're here, and as Pingping mentioned before, is the high number of Chinese students that we have in the classrooms. So I want to talk about not only the two challenges that I've encountered, but also like two different strategies that I've used in order to overcome those barriers. So one is using humor in the classroom and letter responses to create a learning community, both activities. So next. So these are my two challenges. I'm going to address each one at a time. The first one is the Chinese students tend to be nervous and anxious when asked to participate, which connects back to what Teddy was explaining before. In actually generating discussion in the classroom seems to be an impossible task to achieve. And if I could make them talk, they would do it in Chinese. So I would always ask them like, oh great, your Chinese is improving so much in America. And they would be like, oh, okay. So that was something that I was trying to like work on. So then another challenge that I noticed is that when I was trying to engage them in peer review, that was another impossible task because they firmly believe that feedback should come from an expert, in this case a teacher, so they don't really believe in what the classmates or what they can take from their classmates. Next. Okay, so findings, I'm going to address first the issue of speaking in the classroom. So the first one is finding strategies to create a more relaxed environment. So I used an icebreaker activity, and it's, I'm going to explain I don't really have a name for the activity, but it should be like anecdote writing or something like that. So the step one, this is the first day of class, always, for every class, regardless of the level. students are asked to write for about 20 minutes about any surprising, scary or funny anecdote that has happened to them, and they are asked to not write their names on that piece of paper. Also, I asked them to not write the end of the story, whatever they're writing, and I said, how about if you write to be continued, just to give it a little bit of suspense. And then I asked them, like once they're done, I collect their papers, and I shuffle them, and then I hand them in again, but to different students, and I make sure they don't have their own paper next. So after that, the students are asked to read the anecdote they were assigned to read and predict what the ending might be. So, and I also asked them to think about other questions that they might want to ask the person who wrote the anecdote in order to get to know him or her better. So once they read the story, once they have the questions that they want to ask in mind, I asked them to find the person who wrote the story, but they don't know their names. So I said, like, you need to stand up and walk around the classroom and say, who wrote, for example, who wrote the story about the Celtics game? Or who just jumped out of the window when he was 4? So they start asking these questions, and they finally find whoever wrote the story. And then when they find the person who wrote that particular anecdote, they need to interview each other. So they interview each other for about 10 to 15 minutes. And as I said before, I asked them to find out what the end of the story is. And finally, they are in charge of introducing that classmate, not only what they know about the person, but also the story and what struck them about the story. Okay, next. So this is my activity. Now, I noticed, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. I think because I'm nervous. So I noticed that by using this activity and the next class, like talking about this and like talking about the anecdotes, they were laughing, they were having a lot of fun in the class, and they were more eager to talk. And I also was trying to like joke around. So I started thinking about the use of humor in the ESL classroom. And this might be a little bit controversial because we think about humor as being something very sociological and culturally based. But at the same time, I found that using humor in the classroom is an amazing way to engage the students to talk. So what do I refer, no, back. What do I refer to by humor? So I said anything that creates a feeling of fun and amusement in the classroom, anything. And examples of humor, oh, but I wanted to clarify. I don't usually use humor that is part of the lesson. No, the lesson itself will create, and the discussion will create this sense of humor and enjoyment. So we said examples of humor include funny stories, funny comments, jokes, inside jokes, because we create our jokes in the classroom, in workplace, and sarcasm. So I started wondering, like, okay, I'm using humor in the classroom, but I'm wondering if this is something that is being studied in the language field, and I found a lot about humor in the classroom, and I was shocked. So I wanted to quote this person. Xiao. He is a professor at the University of Putra in Malaysia, and he also conducts research in Australia and New Zealand about this topic, using humor in the classroom. So he says there is extensive research on the use of humor in the ESL classroom that indicates there is now a substantial body of research indicating the facilitative role of humor in general education as well as second language teaching and learning processes. Next. So I'm going to use a specific example, and I think this is the example that Pingping talked about before. This happened in the fall of 2013 when I walked into my classroom and I found that I had 20 Chinese students. And all of them were like this, terrified, and I was terrified too. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with you. What am I going to do with you? And one Korean, who was also terrified, of course. So then I said, okay, what am I going to do? So I started applying this activity, the icebreaker that I talked about before, and also I noticed that I could just like joke around with anything they would say it in the class. And the students started like getting engaged into these, let's say, humorous environment in the classroom. So the results were that students were more engaged in class discussion, and their sense of community increased immensely. I could not believe it. I could not believe it. Like students, I had to say, like, please be quiet, stop it. And even in English, even they were speaking in English, which was very surprising to me. So students would seek any opportunity to talk about their experiences and to laugh at each other respectfully. I want to make clear. And one thing that I noticed about this particular class was the use of nicknames, which for a lot of people could be very offensive, right? But these guys use like the use of nicknames in such a respectful but also funny way that I wanted to use these examples. For example, I'm not going to talk about all of them because I don't have time, but the first one is The Giver. So I bet that you guys know about the book The Giver, right? Okay, so we were reading this book for this class, and I had one Chinese student, obviously Chinese student, because I had 20. One of the Chinese students, he would always know the answers. And every single, and Pingping was there, right, Pingping? And every time he was like, me, me, me. And the students were like, oh no, you are the giver. And so that was the entire semester. Anytime we referred to him, he would be the giver. These are other examples that I want to skip now, but I just wanted to give you, some of these examples are funnier when it happens in the classroom. I can't be as funny as they are because it's very contextual. So let's go to the next one. So some of the benefits of using humor in the classroom include, from my perspective, the increase of instructional effectiveness, so engagement in the classroom, the increase of persuasiveness when conveying an idea, so teachers and students. It was easier to communicate. We were less anxious, less afraid. And the increase of student motivation and confidence to participate in class, so the output. This idea of pushing the students to produce the language because they're ESL and they need it, desperately need it. And increase in the sense of community in the classroom, so teachers, students, and students. And finally, an enjoyable and relaxed classroom atmosphere. That was probably one of the best things that I could take from this experience. Next. Some considerations though. Some teachers are just humorless. And it depends on the context as well, because it's not that you're going to be try and force yourself to be funny. This is just not going to happen. So it's actually very genuine, and it has to happen there. You need to find the opportunities to do so. And connected to what I said before, using humor in the classroom will be determined by the instructor's personality, totally, and their conviction to use this method. So I would say that as a sociolinguistic, and more specifically as a sociocultural phenomenon, humor in the ESL classroom needs to be created within the classroom community and not from the sociocultural context of the target language itself. So I cannot just come and talk about like this American TV show that I watched last night and they will be like, oh, should I laugh? Is it funny? Because they won't understand it. So it happens within the classroom. And humor implies setting boundaries when it comes to the seriousness of submitting assignments on time, because I pushed them really hard for that, being prepared and coming to class on time and being respectful to one another. So we had a lot of fun in that class. Pingping was there, and we never had an issue of like disrespect, except not at all. Okay, I think the next one. And now I'm going to talk about, this is the end for humor in the classroom. Now I'm going to talk about peer review. So, as I think Pingping said before, when we go to the ESL classroom, we make a lot of assumptions. And we think the students are just ready to accept any type of activity that we give them and that they should be successful just because we think our activity is great. So my assumption, first of all, was that this activity, like peer review, and I wanted to clarify what I refer to as traditional peer review, which is on the first page. This idea of filling in the blanks, where is the thesis, where is the main idea, all these things. And I was really optimistic about this activity, as any teacher, I bet. And I said, okay, these would help them improve their writing skills, and they will obviously expand ideas and discover new perspectives. That was my assumption. And then the reality in the classroom really struck me. The students clearly failed this day for this activity. It was really sad. Peer review was regarded more as a punishment. When I said, oh, we're going to do peer review. Like this face. And I'm like, okay, they hate it. than a way to practice their writing skills. So they don't really believe in the effectiveness of this activity or this exercise. So I started like wondering, what's wrong with peer review? This is amazing. So I started asking them, like, what do you think about peer review? So the students started by answering, like, peer review is boring. Not surprising. That's the most obvious answer I got. And another answer was like their classmates' feedback is either condescending or too praiseworthy. So they couldn't deal with the authority from another classmate. And they thought that when whatever they wrote was awful. It's terrible. I hate my essay. And the peer review or like the feedback they got from their classmate was like, great essay, excellent. I love your ideas. And that was it. So they felt like, no, I need real feedback. So I also found that there were some cultural reasons for these. So peer review is rare in China, right? If not inexistent in their cultures. So they don't really practice peer review. So students are not experts on writing. That's their belief. Their feedback is a waste of time. And teachers are the only ones who can provide quality feedback. And finally, and not surprising for any of you, they believe grammar is essential to good writing. And their classmates cannot notice those mistakes. Next. So finding a new strategy, and I was like, okay, what can I do? I need to engage these students into doing peer review. So I said, how about a letter? They could write a letter. A letter is almost a universal concept. Pretty much everyone knows how to write a letter. And a letter or an email implies a more informal, like sort of like a non-threatening activity. And writing a letter would release the student's burden to be expert evaluators. So now I wouldn't be asking them to address specific issues within the paper, but to respond from a more global perspective. So the students would be more focused on meaning rather than technicalities of writing. So I refer to by technicalities of the language. Where is the main idea? How is a thesis statement? Is it arguable? Why or why not? So all these very structured questions would somehow restrain their ability to really express how they feel about the student's writing. And a letter entails a form of real communication because I'm not structuring the answer. It's exactly what comes from them. Next. And I said, okay, the benefits of writing response letters. So I started applying this strategy in every single of my classes. And I noticed that students would unconsciously become real critical readers and writers, and they were not desperately focused on form anymore, but contextual meaning. And the students gave substantial comments, very substantial comments, but not only on the writer's ideas, but also expanding the writer's ideas, and sometimes even helping the writer understand the readings. No, I think you misunderstood this part. And then there was a significantly less concern for grammar unless it really obfuscated the meaning of the sentence. And they would not attribute the mistake to grammar. Oh, your grammar is bad. They would rather say, oh, I don't understand what you mean. Oh, you should rephrase this sentence. Or you should just like do something different. So that was really good. And no, asterisk. And the response letter is a unique opportunity for additional written interaction. So we're always trying to push to students to produce some output, right? And when we think about output, we always think about speaking. Oh, this is the way to produce the language. Now, writing is another amazing way to express what they feel and to practice the language itself. So these provided like real interaction, which I think is highly beneficial for ESL students. Next. This is an example, and I gave you this handout. Maybe if you can take a look maybe at this example, or how about if we take a look at this example? I included 3 different samples in the handout, but this is one of them. I think this is the first one, if I'm not wrong. We could take a look at this part here. The second paragraph, it says, first, in your introduction, I'm confused. I'm confused by one sentence. The entire sentence is, quote, then what is the original side of human thinking and emotion? I think this sentence is not connected well in the paragraph's idea. I never asked them to do this. And they were doing it because they felt like that's something that they needed to do. I wasn't structuring their answers. And so if you develop your thoughts with explaining more about either what the other side is or what the original or common side is, it would be a better paragraph. So the student was just giving like some insightful reflection about what he understood and what probably the writer misunderstood about the readings. Okay, so let's go to the next one. You can look at the examples later. So my reflections about this activity, particularly peer review. So I think the response letter activity is a way of expressing the self in the form of a critical reader and writer. Definitely is the way to put all your thoughts into that paper and being able to reflect upon what another person writes. Taking away the specific terminology from the peer review exercise enhances definitely their inner desire to question, advise, and comment on topics in which they are engaged. And I would say students become readers and advisors and not judgmental evaluators, and they are terrified of being evaluators who lack expertise. So finally, I would say, okay, this new approach generates a relaxed atmosphere as well in the classroom, just as humor does, when giving constructive feedback on the writing. And it also creates a reading community, definitely, because we are not only doing the readings in the class, but they're also reading each other's writing. And the students are very, obviously, me as an instructor, I'm very eager to learn from them while fostering real communication in the classroom. And I want to end, next, with this quote by Claire Cramch. She is a professor at the University of California, language professor at the amazing. I love her literature. So language for ESL students is not just an unmotivated formal construct, but a lived embodied reality. It is not simply an agglomeration of encoded meanings that are grasped intellectually, cognitively internalized, and then applied in social contexts. Rather, it is a potential medium for the expression of their innermost aspirations, awarenesses, and conflicts. So the more we can push them to express what they feel, either through speaking or writing, I think the better results we will achieve. It's not easy. It takes time to engage them in these activities, but I think it's totally worthy, and for me, it's worked wonders. Thank you very much. And, right, so now that you have the perspective of from Pingping as an observer in our classes, and also Teddy and me as teachers, I think it's important for you to also like hear a little bit of what the students have to say based on their experiences at UMass Boston. So I want to welcome Ray. All right.
Hello everyone, my name is Ray. I'm a ESL student. I'm taking Teddy Talks English and from YouTube. I know okay. Technology. Okay, it's my great opportunity to present my learning experience at UMass Boston. And first, I will talk about the silence mean for Chinese students. So for Chinese students, keeping quiet in class is the best way to show our respect for our teachers. So we have a funny sentence about like a bomb, a teacher is coming. Is always useful to silence. Teacher is coming. Yeah. So our teacher also want the students to be more active, but they want to follow the rules. Raise the hand and wait for the teacher to call on you and then answer the questions. So this culture we inherited for many years, and I observe it is not belong to here, UMass Boston, not belong to here. So next, I want to talk about the critical thinking. In most Chinese students thought it is considered the best to be a neutral position in writing and thinking, because that way we cover the advantages and disadvantages. So now I will share my story in Teddy's class to address challenge I list here. So for speaking in class, like we spend money to study at UMass Boston. Why don't we speaking? You speak one sentence, you earn 20 bucks. Okay, I will speak a lot in class. Yeah, I don't lost the chance to earn the money. So, for my first academic paper, I put a lot of time and effort to this paper, and it turned out to be a C+. It's not the best. So my study got worse until one day that my teacher asked me to write to free write in class. So no Google search and no enough time to copy others' words from internet, and I only can use my own voice and free write without looking at others' idea. So I feel bad when I finish this paper. I thought I will get a lower grades as usual. However, I got a high score that I have ever expected. It makes me in thinking, and how come this time I got a high score? How come? What is really important for academic writing? And suddenly I got the point which my teacher already teach to me. It's the critical thinking and the original thought. It's not copy others' ideas. So I wake up, I quit my old way, and it can say I stepped into a new world. I read my own voice and try my best to view the topic in different ways, and takes my position clearly. I'm avoid to search online too much. I don't rely on the Google search, and only looking the academic journal and books. So most important, I learn how to use the quotation in right way. It's so sad. Before this semester, I used this quotation without the work site or reference or even the quotation mark. I didn't use that. I didn't know that. So through the teachers, Teddy's repeatedly teaching, okay, I was gradually using in right ways. So so I know that I also know that not every sentence could be used a quotation. So I need to understand deeply and completely meaning, and I analyze it in my own words and don't repeat the quote. So I realized the best way for academic writing is to form an opinion, legally cite source, and analyze the quotes to support my argument. So when I wrote the second paper, I succeeded. It's my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. So okay, I want to thank for my teacher's hard working and her helpful suggestion, and she always encouraged me to speak your words, use your ideas, not from others. You see yours. You are the best. So I'm so glad to be her student. Yeah, it's to teach me. I'm not on the way to study English scientifically. I don't know pronounce this, but still needs time and hard work to continue progress. And for international students, English is not only a language, but also is a key to obtain a success in America. So use a motto: no pain, no gain. I believe that every effort and the pain I made before, I will get the rewards in the future. Thank you. Thank you.
So now we want to introduce Astrid. You want to stand there? Okay. Go.
Oh no, it's okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Young Gao. It's my honor to stand here and share part of my experience at UMass Boston with you. More specifically, in my IVSA freshman courses, 3 years ago, I came to Boston for studying as an international student. After being exposed to the Chinese teaching style for 12 years, transitioning to an American teaching style was not easy at all. I want to start by talking about the Chinese teaching style based on my own experience, and I would dare to say for most Chinese students. In China, students basically to do what teacher says, so there is a clear hierarchy between teachers and students. We highly respect the teachers, not because we want to, but because we have to. We are somehow afraid of our teachers, and this hinders our ability to participate in class. In fact, class discussion is not very welcome because teachers believe that if they allow us to discuss in class, we will start chatting about things that are not related to the class. For this reason, Chinese students struggle in American courses because they are not used to participating in class. It's not because we are not involved in the course, but the past experience shaped us to be the type of student who talk less. However, most American professors encourage students to talk a lot in the class and share their opinions. For some American teachers, if you don't talk, they will think you're not here paying attention. You're somewhere else, but not learning. So this can affect how professors evaluate Chinese students. Also, American teachers emphasize that students must be creative and more autonomous and diligent. But we need extra help to work on those concepts. Finally, I'd like to emphasize that maybe the solution to help us succeed should come from both American teachers and Chinese students. For instance, some moderate pressure should be part of the American teaching style to help us transition into this educational system because we are used to be pressured to accomplish assignments. We honestly need some more pressure because most Chinese students don't know how to take their initiative to study with all the freedom or autonomy we encounter here in America. On the other hand, Chinese students should find more strategies to be more active in class and autonomous in terms of our responsibility with our assignments. The change or transition will be very slow because I definitely believe that getting rid of 12 years of being under the Chinese teaching style cannot happen in 1 or 2 semesters. My most recent experience taking Lorena class made me feel again, wow, this is the type of teacher our Chinese students need. I had a similar experience when I was taking Teddy's class. Lorena is not the kind of professor who would let us guess what do we have to do for this class. For every class, we discussed all the readings, and she would let us report back to her to make sure we are on the right track. For assignments, she would explain particularly what we have to do. This helps us follow and understand the requirements for the class, and we wouldn't waste time. Talking about the atmosphere in the classroom, I have to say Lorena is funny. You can see. Friendly but strict. Her personality is the one that fits into the expectations of Chinese students because that helps us become friends and participate more in class. But she also pushes us to complete what we need to do. She uses a good balance in the classroom. Thank you.
So now, I think it's time for questions and right? So we have a conclusion here. We have some quotes here. I don't know if we have time to read them. Do we?
Quotes from our experts who talk about, and each one. The first one is favorite.
Yes, we should just go to question and answer. We can just leave them here, and we'd love to hear from you if you have comments or questions. And I will pass them.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. First, it's more for the students, and you guys did awesome. So my two questions, one for Astrid is what sort of pressure are you talking about exactly? And the second is there something you guys feel, well, no, I guess the better question is, what are you guys told about the transition to the American teaching style before you get here, if you're told anything?
I'd like to answer that. What was different before you came here? What is pressure for you?
Okay, the pressure I'm talking about is, before we came here in China, we went to school every day. There's no there was no excuse for you don't want to come to school, but when we come here, we are living with our parents, right? And there's absolutely no one can really regulate us to study or go to class. We have too much freedom in here. So kind of we lose part of the pressure when we are here because nobody pushes us. But we need to because we were used to, like, under this kind of pressure, someone pushing us. So
what can a teacher do to pressure you?
Like I mentioned, you mean China? No. Here. Oh, so they are strict, and for example, they tell us, so if you do not hand in the homework by Wednesday or Friday, okay, you will get an F. Yeah, but I just take an example. So the
grade motivates.
yeah.
What are you guys told before you come here, if anything, about the differences in the education?
What were your expectations before when you went to China? What did you expect when you came there?
Yeah, we have image from the movie or the book. Yeah, it's free. It's totally free. And you like a bird, you can.
Freedom.
You mean like Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
No. So for the movie, most image is drunk or something. No, not that way. We know that it's not true. We know that that is not true. It's just for we can see our really want to see, and we can see that, and we can have my own position in each field, each topic, and also in class we do more activity, the interaction or lab, and not just stay on the stair and listen to the teachers saying. So more interesting. And yeah.
My question is for the students also. I think that you have some great ideas, and you guys were great. One of the things that you mentioned, Astrid, was that you suggest more pressure, and I'm wondering if you're talking about in your ESL and English classes, and maybe if you could tell us if you've taken other academic courses and what your experiences have been. And the reason why I ask is because while it would be great to bring several cultures together, unfortunately it's a little unrealistic to expect everyone at UMass Boston to change their teaching styles. And so I worry that, or I wonder if when you've gone on to non-ESL classes in your other college courses, what have been your experiences if your professors are not pushing you, are not pressuring you? I guess my question is, do you think in the long run that this hand-holding, this pressure will be beneficial for you or detrimental? And have you experienced that already?
I think both for ESL courses or the academic courses, the
the pressure both beneficial us, because I know it's hard to change one teaching style, especially with so many international students from different countries. But like I mentioned, it's both responsibility for teachers and students to work on this transition to let students can get a better education here. So it's both responsibility for both of us. And I think the pressure is good because in somehow if we under pressure, we can do some succeed when we are not able to do without pressure. So it's my own experience because for some course I took, if the professor he was just talking in front of the class and just gave us syllabus or the homework schedule, but without reminding you when is the assignment due or what do you need to do, then it kind of slowed me to doing the homework, and it will give me a feeling that the professor doesn't care about whether we hand in the homework or not. So then if I'm lazy, but it's true I'm lazy, I will not do the homework, or I will hand in the homework late,